Before we get into the video, I want to say that this video is solely about my experience as a student in Hong Kong. With that said, let's get into the video. Yeah. Hello, what's up? If you are an old subscriber, welcome back. Wonderful to have you here. And if you are just now tuning into this channel for the first time, hello, I'm JJ, and for the past year, I studied in the Master of Science in Corporate Governance and Compliance program in Hong Kong Baptist University in Hong Kong. I'm now done with all my studies and I will be graduating in mid-November. Whoop whoop. Now that I'm graduating, I want to talk about my experiences and what it was like to live in Hong Kong during late 2019 and early 2020. With that said, I can only talk about my own experiences and my perspective. I cannot talk about Hong Kong universities in general, and I can't talk about other programs or majors and other experiences that other people had during this time period. Now, you might have heard some things that happened in Hong Kong during the past 1.5 years and about the recent events that affected people around the world. Which made everything that much more unforgettable. To start off, I want to talk about my studies, what happened, and what was it like. I applied for an international postgraduate scholarship to study in Hong Kong Baptist University. And I got the scholarship, which meant that I got a full tuition fee waiver and 100,000 Hong Kong dollars in living subsidies. 100 grand in Hong Kong dollars is just under 13,000 US dollars. And if you want to pay for tuition in Hong Kong, for example, my program will cost you around 172,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is around 23,000 US dollars. So yeah, scholarship for the win. I moved to Hong Kong without a plan where to live in mid-August of 2019. And I found a place to rent within 10 days after arriving to Hong Kong, which was great. We found this studio apartment that had 265 square feet of space, and we paid roughly 1,500 US dollars a month to stay there. So very reasonably priced. Corporate governance and compliance program itself was a tough experience. But the program does not feature a mandatory thesis. So all you need to do is pass your courses and you get a master's degree and you get a theoretical qualification to work as a company secretary in Hong Kong and challenge yourself in a hectic environment. Fantastic stuff. The teachers I had were great, and if you don't have a problem listening to Asian accents, you will be fine. Good stuff for people who are interested in business and the corporate world. I would recommend the program if you have any interest in the field. So now I will start to address the elephant in the room, the Hong Kong protests and how they affected studying. Firstly, when my studies started in late August and early September of 2019, it was suggested by the university that we would stay away from the illegal protests. So the protests that had not received the letter of no objection from the local police. The stance on the matter was that if students wanted to participate in protests, the university couldn't really tell us no, like we are adults. I think they thought it was important for Hong Kong people to raise their voice, as back then they actually had the right to do so. However, we were warned about the fact that the protests could escalate in violence, which they did eventually. And due to this reason, it was safer for us to just completely avoid the protests. Now, I can't do this video without talking about the major event that had a huge impact in my life in Hong Kong, which is 831. Now, 831, the 31st of August 2019, was an incident where protesters were moving around in the MTR, which is this very popular underground public transportation system in Hong Kong. And the police stormed the Prince Edward MTR station and arrested a bunch of people And in the process of doing so, they were beating up and pepper spraying those inside the train station at the time of the incident. To my understanding, the cops were called to the scene because there were protesters and anti-protest people causing commotion in the stations. And it turned out to be an absolute mess. So evidently there were people who were just passengers in the station at the time of the incident. You see video footage of people being beat up and pepper spray just willy-nilly. The cops closed down the station and blocked entry from journalists and paramedics, which was highly condemned because there were injured people in the station who were hospitalized like after 2 hours of being injured at the station. So this combination of beating up civilians and blocking first aid from injured people, it didn't really look good. And, that made people angry. Very, very understandable. Also, the CCTV footage was not released at the time. So the public felt that the cops and the MTR were not being transparent with the situation. Also, a rumor of people dying at the Prince Edward Station on 831 due to police brutality started to circle online. And for the next few months, locals would build a linen wall on a daily basis to the Prince Edward exit B1 to commemorate the dead. So, the locals brought a lot of flowers to the scene. They built altars. They brought gifts for the dead. They burned hell money and incense and all that type of stuff. These rumors were never confirmed, and the cops denied casualties. But the people kept building the linen wall regardless, and the cops would destroy it on a daily basis. And, this cycle continued for several months. So how does this link to me, you might ask? Well, just before 831, I had signed a tenancy agreement to this studio apartment right above the Prince Edward MTR station and right across the street from the Mongkok police station. And due to A31, this location became a very active protesting location where masses of people would gather in front of the Mongkok police station and yell all sorts of things like "Diule Lomo" for the most part, and point lasers at officers, spray paint stuff on the station walls, in Cantonese, which I could not read. And eventually frequent clashes between cops and the protesters started happening. And tear gas, expired tear gas, by the way, bean bags, rubber bullets, Molotovs, and what have you. These things became a huge part of our lives at Prince Edward. And I tell you, trying to study a master's degree while living in tear gas ain't it. That was absolutely horrible. To be clear, I was affected by the gas only a couple of times on the streets. We lived on the 10th floor, so the gas, it didn't really, raise up that high. But when that stuff started flying, to our doorstep, basically there was no way to go out. So we were trapped for long periods of time. And also the fact that this 831 thing happened right below me. It really hit close home to me, At this point, I lost all trust towards the competency of the local police. I was like, I'm not taking the risk of being at the wrong place at the wrong time. When the cops come swinging, they don't care who you are or what you're doing. They just swing at you. And at this point, I also understood the importance of having up-to-date live information of what was going on and where and what was going to happen and where. I got most of my info from Instagram, where I found a couple of profiles that were giving pretty much live situation reports in English. Most of the stuff was posted on IG stories, and I was going through that stuff all the time, and man, did that become depressing. All day, every day, for several months. Through August to December, I would see brutal violence, blood, tears, chants, sexual assaults, people being shot with bullets and beanbags, and all kinds of awful stuff. You name it, it was there. There was this weird cycle Every action has a reaction. So most of the times, one side, either the cops or the protesters, would do something that pissed off the opposing side, and violence would escalate from there. And in many cases, it was the police conduct that pissed people off. Now, while this was going on, I wasn't sleeping much. With all the protests going on under our window, so studying was very hard. The protests ended up canceling many of my classes on my first trimester due to the fact that it simply wasn't safe to go outside or use the MTR. There were no guarantees if you could get home after class due to the roads being blocked by protests or just roadblocks or an MTR shutting down. So the university scheduled makeup classes, which again would be canceled due to the same reasons why the original classes got canceled. It wasn't great. It was pretty depressing times. I had some friends who had to sleep at the university in the library because they couldn't get home, which is absolutely ridiculous. Something I really appreciate the university doing, however, was canceling the whole 3 GPA clause that scholarship recipients had in our admission offers. So the way the scholarship worked was you would get half of the money from the scholarship during the first trimester, and you would have to get a 3 or a higher GPA from your first trimester in order to receive the rest of the money from the scholarship. However, as arranging classes and studying were affected by major physical and mental difficulties, the university amended the clause of needing the whole 3 GPA, and we got the money regardless of our academic performance during the first trimester, which again, like, I was experiencing mad sleep deprivation due to gunfire, chanting, sirens. Many classes were canceled. I was living above a tear gas cloud. So the new arrangement was absolutely fantastic. I want to thank the university employees for understanding the difficulties that students were facing at the time. I know this was an exceedingly difficult time period for the university as well. So kudos for everyone at the university who worked hard on arranging tuition in such difficult circumstances. The university also stepped up with arranging help for people who were having a tough time coping with the situation, and I praise the university for doing that. Something that really affected my studies was the surge of multiple Hong Kong university campuses being occupied by protesters in mid-November 2019. What I think is important to understand is that Hong Kong students played a big role in the Hong Kong protests. And I remember that staff at the university told us, students, that the police may enter the campus only if they are duly authorized and with a strong justification, and which I guess means that they needed some sort of warrants and whatnot to enter because, the campus was private property or something along those lines. Now, obviously, as many of the people joining the protests were students, in my opinion, it was only a matter of time when the police would end up at a university campus. And, that eventually happened, and students were not, happy about that. Not at all. There was an incident on the 8th of November 2019 where a young man, aged 22, I believe, passed away, allegedly due to the Hong Kong police force obstructing paramedics from attending to this guy, which resulted in a delay in treatment after the man had suffered injuries. Due to the anger risen from this incident, protesters began calling for a general strike in Hong Kong, which would be facilitated by obstruction of traffic during rush hours. And there are two big universities near important and busy roads and train tracks, which are the Polytechnic University of Hong Kong and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In these locations, protesters made an effort to cut traffic flow, and the cops couldn't let that happen, so they turned up, and this escalated into a situation where the protesters barricaded campus areas and started a standoff with the police. Now, the biggest sieges happened at the Chinese University and the Polytechnic University, and the Hong Kong Baptist University did not dodge these events either. Around the same time as the Chinese University of Hong Kong and PolyU were under siege in mid-November 2019, Hong Kong Baptist University was also occupied for a brief time period by protesters. This meant full-blown roadblocks around the campus and access control at the roadblocks performed by the occupiers. Me and my girlfriend visited the campus once during the occupation, as we helped a friend pack and leave the campus, as he was living in the dorm on campus, and I had to show my student ID, etc., to be able to enter the campus. I'll tell you, it was a mad scene, but what's even more crazy is the location where this whole thing happened. So when you look at a satellite picture of the school, you might notice that the People's Liberation Army, commonly known as the PLA, lives right next door to the campus. Now, these are Chinese army garrisons, and every time I walked to school, I saw soldiers with automatic rifles, just, patrolling inside the area. So when this whole, let's occupy university campuses and take a stand was going on, people at HKBU thought that it was a great idea to do illegal stuff next to an army garrison. Respect for the bravery, for real. In the end, no huge confrontation between the police and the protesters ever happened at HKBU. There was a couple of canisters of tear gas, and that was it. But compared, for example, PolyU, where the police shot 1,458 canisters of tear gas at the protesters, as well as 1,391 rubber bullets, 325 beanbag rounds, and 256 sponge grenades at the 18th of November, 2019, HKBU was a very mild scene compared to that. What came out of the situation at HKBU were mainly destroyed facilities and total termination of face-to-face teaching at the campus. Cops later confiscated like 400 Molotov cocktails from the campus. So basically my university was turned into a Molotov cocktail factory for a brief time. How about that for a unique university experience? Also, the PLA exited the garrison to clear the streets around the campus, which was sketchy, as they're not allowed to leave the garrison unless they are asked to do so by the Hong Kong government. According to the basic law of Hong Kong, the PLA is not allowed to interfere in local affairs unless called upon by the Hong Kong government to help with, disaster relief or to restore public order. And the Hong Kong government didn't do that, so, sketchy stuff. Now, during the time of protesters occupying campuses around Hong Kong, I was preparing for a curfew, to be honest. There was so much disorder and speculation on Beijing interference, so I was like, better be prepared than, be sorry if shit hits the fan in the worst possible way. Eventually, the situation calmed down. An insane amount of people were arrested and injured, mostly at Chinese University and Polytechnic University. And, many university campuses were rendered, unusable for a long period of time. This was a hard time being a student and to concentrate on studying. There were so many uncertainties regarding studying, upcoming exams, the future of the whole program in general, and also the concern of all these arrested young people. My exams for the first trimester were held in a hotel conference room. And I guess some programs even had face-to-face teaching in hotels. So yeah, the university was looking for alternative ways to keep things going. As said earlier, during the short occupation of the Hong Kong Baptist University campus, facilities were destroyed and vandalized. So it took some time for the campus to open and resume classes, but eventually it happened. And it felt so good to resume to a normal studying schedule. Even though there were still protests going on, there was this very brief time where life felt kind of normal. However, in December 2019, we started to see news and mentions about this infectious virus going around in Wuhan. And yeah, I guess you know the aftermath of that. Long story short, the spreading skyrocketed after Chinese New Year in late January 2020, which led to, cancellation of all face-to-face classes and everything going online, and eventually leading to me leaving Hong Kong to study online from Finland, as international flights were being canceled and we didn't want to get stuck in Hong Kong. So from late February, I studied online from Finland to Hong Kong through Zoom, and all my exams were online exams, and now I am graduating. Recently, we have seen the national security law being passed at Hong Kong. I remember taking a part in a conversation at the university where the university staff told us that the university is a space where, opposing ideas and ideologies can coexist and create discussion. And now I have received emails where these questions have been addressed. And there is this narrative of academic freedom and institutional autonomy being intact and guaranteed by the basic law of Hong Kong. However, freedom being subject to limits, such as the limits of the law. So, right. In hindsight, a lot of things happen in Hong Kong, and it is extremely hard to describe the different things that happened in a way that makes sense and would somehow make a difference or an impact to you, the viewer or the listener, because if you weren't there and if you've never been to Hong Kong, it is extremely hard to get a grasp on what these things mean, because there is this huge political charge in most of this. I'm not the person who will explain these things in depth, because my understanding and my experience is very limited. I wish people would be interested though, and show Hong Kong people the respect that they deserve, and seek for information about the events in Hong Kong. Because if you go to Hong Kong as a student or you go to work there as a foreigner, all your local peers have gone through an insane amount of anger and, fear and disappointment within the past 1.5 years. And I wish when foreigners go to Hong Kong, we would understand these facts and not be these stupid ass ignorant guelos. Now, if you are interested about China and Hong Kong related things, and you would like to learn more, I recommend to check out serpantza and Laowai86 here on YouTube. Their links are in the description. They also have a shared channel, ADVChina, which is also in the description. These guys have exceptional experience when it comes to living in China and visiting Hong Kong over the years. And, they are a great source of information, in my opinion. China is a huge factor globally, so, I think it is beneficial for all of us to have some understanding about China. Anyway, that was my rather unorthodox university experience in Hong Kong. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to slap that like button. And as well, if you want to support my channel and my work here, please do share this video around, because the algorithm sure as hell won't. Also, subscribe if you feel like it. We are so close to 100 subs, so, please make that happen. Anyways, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope the very best for the Hong Kong people, and I hope to see you on the next video. Peace. Guaranteed by the Hong Kong basic law. However, freedom being subject This guy. Trying to make a video here. Say hello to the cameraman.